Prime Minister, welcome back to Curacao. You just came back from a trip to Washington, and what can you tell us about this trip? Were you able to accomplish everything you set out to do?
Yeah, certainly it's been part of a plan where we have been investing in the relationship again, seeing that we have a long-standing historical relation with the United States as formal Netherlands Antilles, but also Curacao, a few hundred years actually. And certainly with regards to the current situation of Venezuela, how that is impacting our islands, we thought it was important to seek to strengthen this relationship. We have received staffers of members of Congress, also 7 members of Congress a couple of weeks ago, and so this was a natural follow-up to visit different departments, conversation with members of Congress, also certain institutions such as the World Bank in Washington to continue forging this relationship and agree on follow-up actions.
Curacao is a very small island. You don't hear much about it in the States, in the United States, but how did you feel? Were you treated as, just an appointment on the agenda, or did you feel like they're really worried about the situation here?
No, I felt, and we had high-level meetings, and I felt that they were really concerned. They were really looking towards us and my colleague, Prime Minister of Aruba, to give them more insight on how the situation in Venezuela is impacting us. Certainly in our case, we talked about migration, we talked about the impact on the refinery, also expressing our thanks for the special license that we received from OFAC that enables our government-owned companies to work on the continuance of the refinery. But we also talked about the future, how we can perhaps contribute to the rebuilding of Venezuela under the right circumstances, but also how we can attract more investment to the islands, which, to be honest, we haven't seen in a long time. So there was a sincere interest, very specific questions and follow-up actions, and certainly they were concerned of how and thankful of how we have been supporting and working together, for example, to provide humanitarian aid to the Venezuelan people.
So a couple of days ago, there was an article in the Netherlands. I think it was written by somebody here, one of the reporters here. It says that Curacao is now really looking towards the United States for their economic boost. Is that true? Is that your government really looking towards the United States now?
Certainly. We have been doing this since the beginning of this government, where we had some pending let's say agenda items that we needed to work on, which we did. Also, we have been visiting, we sent delegations to Washington since the beginning of last year. And actually, my trip was originally planned after the United Nations General Assembly last September, but I canceled that due to other priorities. But I felt this was a better time because of the incoming missions we've had. We've had conversations with Ambassador Piet Hoekstra, which is in The Hague, who came to Curacao on 2 occasions. So let's say it was more fruitful because the delegations that we'd met at the US Treasury, at the National Security Advisor, State Department, we had 2 meetings, and they were very much up to date on what we were facing, but also some of the opportunities we've had for further collaboration.
So you see your trip was successful?
Certainly successful, and also we had meetings with congressmen, Congress representative from the Virgin Islands, because she's part of the Caribbean caucus. Because as Caribbean islands, of course, we're also seeking more involvement, more investment, more presence of the United States and certainly private sector companies in the Caribbean. Because as they admitted, several of the conversations, they said, we tend to see the Caribbean as tourist destinations, yes, and we're not as known for investment opportunities or, for example, what we can offer with regards to our human capital. We, for example, explain that we are a service economy. We've been providing services to companies in the US, for example, the international financial services, outsourcing services, and these are things that we spoke about with, for example, the US Chamber of Commerce as well, which has also special conferences, packages for Latin America and Caribbean. So we're seeking to make the connections there. We also had a chance to talk to the World Bank. And the World Bank, of course, we've already had some working relationship with them. When I was Minister of Economic Development, we did a study for how we can improve our development financing. We are currently doing a risk assessment for compliance so that we can show that we are very mature and advanced in AML, anti-money laundering, counter-terrorist financing, which is important themes for the United States, but for the entire region. We also talked about the correspondent banking issue, which you have been covering as well. Yes. And they came with a practical proposal, practically inviting perhaps our banks to have a conversation directly with the U.S. Treasury so they can explain the issue directly to them. So we have a follow-up there. And the World Bank is organizing a mission to Curacao. There they will have a brainstorming and how they can assist us with our growth strategy, economic development, but also important, the social development and poverty reduction program, so that in a sustainable way we can work to more, let's say, prosperity, but in an inclusive way, which includes all the Curacao people. And that is something they offered. So we are not paying for them. They are invited. They will come here with some experts to brainstorm, and so they can make a proposal how they can assist our plans to be more successful.
That poverty reduction is higher on your agenda, we noticed.
Certainly, certainly. And the World Bank perhaps is not known to everyone here in Curacao. Poverty is part of their mission, but also the Sustainable Development Goals, which they developed together with the United Nations, which of course cover sustainability in all of its facets. So this is very much aligned with our National Development Plan, our growth plan, which has been extracted from there, which more focused. And so it's important that they can give our, let's say, programs the credibility by validating, providing us expertise, and that again will be very positive for international investors. For example, one of the things that we spoke about is that they can do a doing business report, and this is basically a benchmarking where they look at government services, how your processes are, the famous red tape, and they do this periodically. So they do an assessment, they come with policy recommendations, how you can improve, and then let's say in 3 years' time they can come back again and they can show how you're improving, but also it's a way to benchmark with other comparable nations in the Caribbean and elsewhere in the world, which I think we do have things to improve, but on the other hand, maybe there are things that we are very capable of doing, which gives also a positive affirmation for foreign investment, investors that are looking to expand into the Caribbean.
Thank you, Prime Minister.